And welcome to the Daily Space Weather Show. I guess it's probably qualified to be considered a show at this point, having done it for the past 6 years. And by the way, welcome to the Smash News Network, least busted name in news, as we bring you the most comprehensive daily space weather and detailed solar imagery you'll find in the known universe. This is the past 24 hours from the GOES-R in 171 angstroms. It depicts ionized iron, and that's some very hot gas in the lower corona, the sun's atmosphere. You may see some activity kicking off in the upper right-hand portion. That would be the northwestern limb. Also in the east, 2 new sunspot groups have recently risen. They're not named yet. So we've got a bunch of setting regions in the west and a bunch of rising regions in the east. The east would be on the left of your screen, by the way. So here's some of that activity that's occurred in the past 24 up in the northwest. There was a coronal mass ejection. There have been 2 small glancing blow coronal mass ejection brush-bys on planet Earth in the past 24 hours. And they showed up pretty much exactly on time. We'll talk about those a little bit later. Here's a 24-hour video of the northeastern limb of the closest star. Let's take a look at sunspots briefly before we talk about more in-depth analysis of both what's going on planet Earth and what's going on the closest star and the area in between this site of space weather. So this is yesterday plus today's data. And you might see 3 huge umbrae there. Actually, 4 huge umbrae. Really. I mean, and that's what approximately 200 sunspots looks like, folks. That is a lot of sunspots, and we aren't even at solar maximum yet. Here's the colorized magnetogram yesterday plus today. And these 2 groups right here, these are indeed sunspots. They'll get a name today. And we're going to briefly take a look at what's going on croissant Earth. Yeah, Earth. It's shaped like a croissant, the French breakfast pastry. What, do you think Earth was shaped like an oblate spheroid? What, are you crazy? No matter how crazy you are, do not pole vault the caldera, and do save 20% on our merch designs, which are original, ultra-high res, and just ultra-high quality. Now, of course, this one is designed to pump both our homepage, smashomash.com, which we are using to fund the formation of a nonprofit science organization. Smashomash.org will redirect you to smashomash.com. This graphic also depicts our YouTube channel URL. And we've been re-leveraging a bunch of our social media activities in the past few days here. So, yeah, see our posts on the Smash Team site for that. If you're not signed up for the Smash Team site, you're missing a bunch of content. So anyway, smashomash.com is our homepage. And do not pole vault the caldera, folks. It's a message of positivity. Yeah, positivity, because our finest days lie ahead. If you're going on a volcanic vacation, do not pole vault the caldera. That could be unhelpful. And we need the views on YouTube. Also, we need to open people's eyes to the coming revolution in astrophysics and cosmology. Make astronomy and cosmology science again. One of our other designs. This one is basically saying, if you're going through hell, keep going. Do not pole vault the caldera. Pursue other athletic endeavors, like perhaps cycling. Might be a good call. Anyway, save 20% on all of our merch designs from the Redbubble shop. And let's see what's going on with volcanic calderae. Yeah, so we tell you not to pole vault them, and then we tell you about which ones are erupting. Don't pole vault the caldera, folks. This public service message brought to you at massive personal risk and expense by Smash staff and I. Give her a raise. Give Smash staff a raise by picking up some merch. So, LD, Fagradalsfjall, the Reykjanes Ridge, has a large fissure eruption going on. The activity is concentrated at a single vent. Not too much to say about that. Expect an ongoing effusive magma flow It's exciting stuff as new real estate gets built, courtesy of Mother Earth in the southwestern Reykjanes Peninsula of Iceland. So you'll hear constant updates about this, ground deformation observations, etc. Also erupting is Langila on the Isle of New Britain, Papua New Guinea. That's producing a 6,000-foot ash plume as it explodes. Flight level 060. Flight level 140 over Semeru from East Java, Indonesia. It's a 14,000-foot ash plume. And Shisheldin in the Aleutian Islands, filmed by a U.S. Coast Guard helicopter. Looks like yesterday afternoon. Let's show that fantastic imagery. There you go. There is, oh, geez, I apologize for that. There's Shisheldin from a U.S. Coast Guard helicopter view. So not a major eruption there. Volcanic alert level has been raised from yellow to orange. There could be a more serious eruption happening at the moment. The snow-covered peaks there in the Aleutian Islands. So that's just some great imagery there from U.S. Coast Guard. Popocatépetl exploding in central Mexico, flight level 200. It's a 20,000-foot ash plume. 21,000-foot ash plume over Colombia from Nevado del Ruiz. Revenador exploding in Ecuador, flight level 145. It's a 14,500-foot plume of volcanic ash, and a 21,000-foot plume of volcanic ash there emanating from Sabancaya in Peru as it explodes. It's a flight level 210. Next, looking at global seismicity. Here's the current state of affairs. Current seismic activity level high. Because the largest quake of the past 24 just happened a few hours ago here off the southwest coast of Mexico. Yeah. Near the Sierra Madre de Chiapas Mountains in the Gulf of Tehuantepec. That is the location of that 6.3 magnitude quake there. Also likely felt in a small portion of Guatemala. It happened at 9:29 Universal Time this morning on Friday, July 14th. We'll cite quakes over a 5 magnitude, like this one at Russia. Check it out, very far north there. A quake in the Arctic Circle at a 5.2 magnitude occurred at 13:06 Universal Time yesterday afternoon. 15:52 Universal Time yesterday, a 5.2 occurred in the Izu Islands of Japan. That one was at extreme depth at 437.3 kilometers estimated depth. Loyalty Islands had a 5.0 at 20:33 Universal Time there. North of New Zealand is the location of the Loyalty Islands. The Bonin Islands, south of Japan, had a 5.3 at 2:01 this morning. And the South Sandwich Islands, about 40 minutes later, had a 5.0. That was at 2:44 this morning on July 14th. Again, that 6.3 off of the coast of Chiapas, Mexico, was at 9:29 this morning, and that ends our earthquake coverage. Let's get back to space. Here we've added 304 angstroms to the 195 spectacular wavelength. And we're going to come back to 195 angstroms later in the video when we talk about filaments. Let's subtract that and just show 304 angstroms ionized helium. These are all from the GOES-R. We will show some SDO imagery here again in a moment. So most of the filamentary motions here have occurred in the northern hemisphere. You can see some activity there, especially in the northwest. Also some huge filaments there in the northeast. Here's another view of this plasma reorientation and coronal mass ejection. Not likely an earthly directed one. Here's the northeast. equatorial zoom. And there actually is a CME occurring right now from this sunspot down here. So some of that plasma splashing back down, some of that plasma is headed out to the greater solar system. We may make another video later in the day about that. And here's this plasma filament at the south polar region. That is what you call a crown prominence. And you can expect to see more and more of these in the coming about 18 months. You can expect about 18 months of activity similar to the levels that you're currently seeing on the closest star. It's exciting stuff. And let's talk about some more space weather stats. The 10.7 centimeter radio flux is at 203 solar flux units. If you're wondering what a solar flux unit is, it is 10,000 Jansky of radio flux density. Jansky is just a measure of electromagnetic radiation propagating through space. That is a 1-year graph. The black line represents the radio flux. The red line is the sunspot number. The pink line is the 30-day sunspot number average. Radio flux at 203 solar flux units. And next, let's talk about NOAA's forecasts. So NOAA didn't forecast any geomagnetic unrest. We forecasted 2 CME impacts that did occur. They were quite weak impacts. And keep in mind, folks, it's nearly impossible to currently estimate how high the KP index is going to go. So it's basically guesswork at this point. Unless we have spacecraft in between the Earth and Sun to measure the magnetic fields of the clouds of plasma, we can't really guess what sort of KP index will be created from a coronal mass ejection impact. So we did have 2 CMEs. They were right on time as far as our timing and trajectory went. So glancing blows have arrived. We'll talk about that momentarily. This is NOAA's forecast. NOAA is expecting an impact first thing right around midnight universal time. So a CME impact there forecasted by NOAA. That's from the Spaceweather Prediction Center. You can see right there, expecting an impact early tomorrow morning. So we're going to show NASA's forecast here in a minute. First, the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard breakdown. You can see they're expecting a minor geomagnetic storm early in the morning tomorrow universal time. So we may see aurora once again. So it's another night where we could possibly see aurora at mid-latitudes. So we'll keep you posted on that. And if you want email alerts, sign up for email alerts at the Smash Team. That's the best way to not rely on certain other organizations. Rationale: continuing passage of the 10th of July IMF shock and expected glancing blow arrival of the 11 July CME are expected to result in a chance for G1 minor storm conditions on the 14th. So yeah, expecting, geomagnetic unrest late tonight. That's NOAA's forecast. And so far, the second CME impact has been kind of weak, but there are 2 more on the way. So we're not discounting the upcoming events. We are in line with those. I would tend to agree with these additional impacts here. So exciting stuff. NASA, however, does not agree. So this happens all the time, folks. NASA and NOAA, and actually we regularly disagree with NASA and NOAA's forecasts. It happens all the time, folks. And here's NASA's forecast. They've got those CMEs modeled going off to Earth's west. So no earthly directed components according to NASA. And again, this happens all the time, folks. We get disagreements, and that's what science is all about, figuring out who's right. And if there's some kind of a systematic way to do so, tell others about it. That's why we publish science papers in the real world. Here's the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space. Again, we have had another minor CME glancing blow, brush by sort of a thing. No major particle impact and no super strong magnetic fields. So that's the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space. It is remaining geomagnetically calm at the moment. Here's Earth's magnetic moment from the ground, and you can use the ground magnetic perturbations map to guess if the aurora will be visible in your location. So try that out. If you haven't tried it out before, you can use the Geospace Delta B there. The ground magnetic perturbations map. You can find it on the Spaceweather Prediction Center page. It's right under the Geospace Magnetosphere Movies area. That's the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. Geomagnetically calm might not continue for the next 24 hours. If you want to monitor the stuff as it happens in sort of a real-time capacity, try the Boulder magnetometer. That works. Another feature you can visit from the Spaceweather Prediction Center, or SWPC. And my favorite is the geoelectric field map. So these incoming CME events, they do create induced current in long runs like pipelines and railways and the power grid, which is what is depicted here. It's depicting millivolts per kilometer, and these things show up as quickly as they go away, folks. So you need to be prepared for CME impacts if you are planning to try to get imagery of the aurora. And keep in mind, when CME impacts do strike Earth, the worst case scenario for a power grid is for it to be noontime in the middle of summer, because air conditioning really beefs up the amount of electricity use. And, most first world nations are unlikely to have their grid taken completely down by a coronal mass ejection impact, as most transformers in modern nations have electronic circuitry to shut them down, and there's EMP shielding on various backup systems, and the U.S. power grid is a little bit more fortified than certain bunker supply salesmen would have you believe. So we do encourage prepping. Have a bunker, as you never know what you're going to need one for. In the coming days, it is very unlikely that you will need one as a result of space weather. It's about 0%. So anyway, have a bunker, do your prepping, have generators, battery backups, etc. More on that later in the video. Planetary K-index currently at 3.33, which means something to the Illuminati. It's, that number 33, I don't know what it allegedly means. It's utter nonsense. A lot of confused people on the internet are confused about a lot of things. And the number 33, 33, 33, 33, folks. Oh no, did I summon a demon by saying 33? Oh no, I'm so spooked. If you are frightened of numbers, you may want to seek psychiatric help. KP index currently at 3.33. Geomagnetically calm conditions, but not far from what we'd call geomagnetic unrest. Again, there was a second CME impact, so these have been weak. Here's the first one. It showed up right on time here at about, about just 1600 universal time there. So there's the first one. You can see a significant signal in the BTBZ. That's the magnetic field strength and orientation, in the plasma density and the plasma temperature and the plasma velocity all at once. So that's the first CME impact. Here's the second one. It's more of a brush pass than an impact, as it's a very weak particle impact. Here's the second one. This arrived just a few hours ago. Once again, you can see this time the phi angle shifted. The fields got weaker, and you can see an increase in the solar wind density and the solar wind speed, and a change in the plasma temperature once again. So that's the second CME, very weak, but it did show up on time at least. So that says something about forecasting. At least we're able to forecast the timing for the CME impacts. Again, it's very hard to estimate how hard they will hit without information from spacecraft about the magnetic field strength and orientation. So here are the GOES magnetometers for the past 3 days, and those are showing actually very, very low highs and low lows there in the past 12 hours. And hey, these things vary a lot when there is plasma in the system trying to reach static equilibrium. The GOES 16 and GOES 18 are at about 23,500 miles of altitude in their geosynchronous near equatorial orbits. Those are the locations of their magnetometers. Next, we'll look at the top view ecliptic plane field plot, and we're getting a little bit of chaos here happening in the heliosphere. So that's exciting stuff. You can see some North Pole oriented current sheet here popping up out by stereo A, and I suspect that has closed back up again. Now keep in mind this does have some predictive value, although today I'm not making any predictions based on it, as we've got a couple new sunspots rather close to the equator on the eastern limb. So let's just bring up the last image. Earth is right in the middle of a South Pole oriented current sheet. Here's the line of sight view. And this is starting to look more and more like solar maximum. So the floodgates remain open, folks. It's up and up and up and away to solar maximum here. Expect these levels of activity to continue for the next 9 months and then ramp down for another 9 months. So you can expect like nearly 2 years, about 18 months, we think, of similar levels of solar activity or greater levels of solar activity. Anyway, that's a line of sight field plot. It depicts the solar B field in blue, north and south polar fields in green and red respectively, and the gong magnetogram in grayscale there. Next we'll do coronal holes. Let's bring up our SDO imagery here. So here's our line of sight coronal hole plot. Again, you see a North Pole coronal hole open up here and then close back up again. And this is something you can expect to see more and more of as we ramp up towards solar maximum. A little bit more chaos happening there, a little bit less orderly situation. So let's go back. Let's bring up the last image here, and then there is yesterday plus today in SDO 211 angstroms. So those are the coronal holes. No real well-defined transequatorial ones here or anything. There could be some high-speed winds associated with those coronal holes. We've now stopped saying coronal holes are the, quote, source and quote of high-speed streams. They are associated. I suspect it has to do with magnetic field disparity, and those protons are probably creeping up the walls of the coronal hole, but we'll save that for a different video, as we do have one in the works about coronal holes, a super important feature of the solar sunspot cycle, and very well visible here in 211 angstroms from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. Again, there's the latest image. Earth is right in the middle of a South Pole oriented current sheet. That's why the B field, depicted in blue, appears so fanned out. All these coronal holes are South Pole oriented at the moment. And let's move to sunspots. So there's a situation with sunspots. Again, we'll have 3373 and 3374 will get names today. This one should already have a name by now. It will today. This one might not get named until tomorrow, but there you go. 2 large sunspots have just risen on both sides of the solar equator there. And let's take a look at those in the SDO intensitygram. And we'll zoom in. This depicts yesterday plus today, folks. That is July 13th plus July 14th. So we do have some degradation up here. 1, 2 sunspot groups have gone away. Some degradation down here. This sunspot group has gone away. A new one formed down here, though. So 2 rows on the east, 1 formed there, some degraded. But for the most part, most of those umbrae are pretty stable. Which brings us to energetic particles and solar flares and all of that exciting stuff. But before we do any of that, take a moment to help the channel out. If you enjoy the content, please consider visiting our links, maybe checking out the Hemp Lucid link. Did you know that our mushroom gummies and mushroom stacks use the power of reishi, cordyceps, chaga, lion's mane, CBD, CBN, and natural ingredients to provide your body with a natural array of botanical benefits? Yeah, botanical benefits, folks. I use both the focus mushroom gummies and the stress mushroom gummies. There's also a sleep mushroom gummy there. Immune stacks. So check out those great products there from Hemp Lucid. Links below the video, as well as on the homepage at smashomash.com to the Hemp Lucid. Today's featured products are the mushroom gummies and mushroom stacks. These are not going to make you trip balls, by the way. Today's featured product on the Amazon store is our air fryer. Yeah, this is the actual one that we have in the actual color that we have, the GoWise USA. It's only $51, folks. If you don't have an air fryer, your kitchen is lacking modern technology. There's the Amazon shop. It's amazon.com/shop/smashomash. By the way, thanks to our new viewers on YouTube, we are frankly surprised that you've found the channel, considering the pathetic, putrid, disgusting, ridiculous, criminal sense of censorship on the internet at the moment. It's pretty putrid. It's pretty gross. It's pretty ridiculous. So, hey, congratulations on finding the channel. You won't find a more comprehensive daily space weather in the known universe. Did you know we're also in the process of writing a paper that explains the solar sunspot cycles? Why? Because in science, we often end up with answers to questions not asked, which is exactly what's happened. So I guess we better report those answers because it's pretty serious. You can also find us on Instagram, and you can expect to see more and more posts over there. Check out our Throwback Thursday image. You can also find us on Twitter, and those will be the most likely places to see online activity from us. So YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Those are the big four. And if you're suggesting that we ought to use alt tech instead, we're suggesting that that's not going to work because these other companies, in other words, Alphabet, Meta, and Twitter, are monopolies in their own spaces. Of course, a lot of people are suggesting now that, Threads is going to replace Twitter. It just doesn't seem that it is going to replace Twitter. And of course, they're trying to tear down Twitter, whatever. I don't really care about any of the politics associated with it. I am apolitical, never been associated with a political party, and probably never will be. You can also find a link on the homepage to the Golden Cap Productions music, our music label. I started that back in the year 2000. And by the way, I own all of those tracks. So there are no tracks there that have publishing owned by anybody else. If you want to buy music, we will pull it down and sell it to you for the right price. So I own 100% of the publishing. It is all original, and there is nobody on the payroll for Golden Cap Productions. I mean, besides me. So smashomash.com, you'll find all of those links there. There's also a Facebook group. You can find links to the Redbubble shop, Hemp, Lucid, Patreon, PayPal, Spotify, Amazon shop, a permanent invite link to the Discord channel. If you want to send an instant message, do it on Discord. You can also find a link to the Threads account where we've got... And figure this one out, folks. If Threads is going to replace Twitter, how come only 36 of our Instagram followers transferred over to Threads? We've got like 500 Instagram followers, and on Threads, 36. It looks as pathetic and shattered as all of the other ridiculous censorship and spyware-filled big tech monopolies. Smashomash.com is not a monopoly. It is a free speech advocate. We encourage all legal speech, and we don't do things like mute, ban, kick people. We don't delete people's comments or anything like that. If your comments are mysteriously vanishing, that's not us. That's YouTube. So, yeah. Free speech purists, folks, and not phony free speech purists who pretend to be free speech purists and then still continue to uphold censorship. A truly pathetic joke is everybody who claims that they're a supporter of free speech and then allows censorship to occur on their social media site. This is still the U.S., last I checked. Anyway, let's get to energetic particles and solar flares. The Ghost proton flux here is pretty much flatlined. The X-ray flux here, a little bit of flaring activity happening once again while we produce the video. There have been 2 M-class flares in the past 24 hours. They were pretty small M-class flares, the largest one being this one here. Peak flux was around 1920 Universal Time yesterday. It was an M2.12 class flare. And here comes some flare wavelengths. So this is 131 angstroms from the GOES-R. And we've got multiple locations where a flare is likely. So my favorite location for a large flare is right around this area, the eastern limb in general. Second likely place is right here, as this has produced a large flare in the past 24 hours, and also this setting group up here. So those are the three hot spots for large solar flares in the next 24 hours. Here's the equatorial zoom. Pretty sweet imagery there from the GOES-R. This is 131 angstroms, one of the many species of ionized iron, and it shows great definition of that species of ionized iron aligning to magnetic field lines. If those look like magnetic field force lines, that's exactly what they are. That species of plasma likes to align to those magnetic field lines. Plasma, it's not magic. And by the way, plasma cosmology is not science. Continuing right along here, we want to show our viewers what is going on overhead. So here's a star chart. Just press the Now button once you've put in your location, and you can make your own star chart if you like. We've got a crescent waning moon up there. Also Saturn and Jupiter. If you are up after dusk, you get a great view of Venus and Mars there, remaining very close together on the ecliptic. And if you've got a low horizon and clear skies and low light pollution, you might even be able to see Mercury there just after sunset. Next, your solar system forecast. Here's where stuff is today, and here's where stuff will be in 1 week. Again, we're going to have this alignment between Mercury, Venus, the Moon, and the Earth, and this will have people spooked. Oh, noes. Things in a line. It's very dangerous. It's about as dangerous as it's not dangerous in any way. I mean, these planets have been here for billions of years, we think. And, yeah. The planets aren't going to kill you. There is no Nibiru. And our finest days lie ahead. A lot of YouTube content creators just lie. Remember, folks, the line between misrepresentation and fraud is simply intent. In other words, if you are mistaken, you've misrepresented material facts. If you're intentionally misrepresenting material facts, you've committed fraud. As an insurance agent, I take this to heart. Anyway, yeah, I'm squeaky clean, by the way. I'm licensed for accident, health, and life insurance in 28 states. And obtaining those licenses is probably more difficult than obtaining a job for the federal government. I also have a federal security clearance, by the way. So there's a reason why we're the least busted name in news. I'm the least busted YouTuber on YouTube. So here is the George Mason University coronagraph imagery. That's 101 frames from yesterday, July 13th. And you can see that CME there coming out of the western limb. That does not appear to be earthly directed. We will show a further analysis of that in a minute. First, today's coronagraphs. There are today's 37 frames. Again, there is a CME coming out of the southwestern limb as we speak. It's going to be too early to get any trajectory on that or anything, or even get a good view of it, I suspect. But if it is relevant, we will put up another video today. So moving right along, here is Soho Lasco C2 and C3. Let's see if that latest CME is showing up yet. Yep, it's just popping out of the southwest just now. So that is so far unlikely to be earthly directed. We'll let those play through before we show stereo A. And you can see some relativistic particles there striking the Lasco aperture. Right in there on the C3. And we show this image daily also because we want people to realize that stereo A and the Earth are practically at the same spot. Only a couple of degrees of angle difference there between stereo A and Earth. Stereo A represented by the red circle there, Earth by the green circle. Here's stereo A on the left, and Soho Lasco C3 on the right. So this is last night's CME. This does not appear to be earthly directed. It looks like it's kind of on the far side and also to the northwest. So let's cut to our custom coronagraphs here. As always, here's the past 24 hours featuring the composite of the Soho Lasco C2 and C3, and that is the GOES SUVI 195 angstroms. Pretty sweet imagery. You can see the aftermath of yesterday's CME. That's one of 4 that are headed toward Earth. Yeah, it's been a banner few days for space weather indeed. Here's an even closer zoom in. And by the way, we are anticipating another CME from the northeast. So that is about 100% likely there. And what the heck, did I miss one of my videos here? Nope, we got them all. And that brings us to filaments. So plasma filaments are features that often turn into coronal mass ejections. So let's take a look at those. First, from the El Teide, Spain ground-based Hydrogen Alpha telescope. So we've got a huge number of filaments here. You can see this one has just ejected. That one is on its way out of the southwestern limb as we speak. We've got some huge ones up here. There's a big filament here. This one's shaped like a C. Crown prominence down here. Crown prominence up here. Filament here. Filament down here. Filament over here. Lots of filaments. What can I say? Here's that crown prominence down at the southern polar region. Here's the northern polar region. And by the way, I can't say enough about the 195 angstroms wavelength. That's not featured on the SDO. That's only available on the GOES-R. Here's the equatorial zoom. It doesn't hurt our feelings at all when we have to use the GOES-R because, again, 195 angstroms is a fantastic wavelength. It's another species of ionized iron, by the way. And here we'll zoom all the way out. That is a good wavelength. Highly recommended. Shows lots of different features, including the extended corona, active regions, filaments, and to a lesser extent, coronal holes. Blasting right along here. We don't want the video to be too lengthy. Let's move it. That's a 24-hour video, by the way. As we strive for completeness when it comes to what's going on in space. Yes, space. A frontier. So here are the past 2.5 hours from the GOES 18 SUVI. Again, that CME that's propagating right now is coming from this active region. I would not anticipate it to be earthly directed, but it is way too early to tell. I suspect that will miss Earth to the southwest. So, that said, moving forward, it's time for bonus features. Starting out with the Satellites Community Dashboard. We're looking for charging hazards for satellites, and at the moment there are some minor surface charging hazards there in the Central Pacific Ocean, the Central East Pacific, where low-energy electrons are building up on the surface of some satellites there. Those are minor surface charging hazards. The GOES electron flux here has cratered, as somewhat forecasted. Here's the one-year graph to put the relativistic electrons in context. Now, these relativistic electrons, these are measured at the F flare of the ionosphere. So the GOES 16 and the GOES 18, they're at like 23,500 miles of altitude, and they're using radiographic measurements to measure the electron flux at the F flare of the ionosphere. So this does become anomalous during geomagnetic storm conditions. And it's one of the many features that we use to show us when things like coronal hole high-speed streams are ending, for example. So again, there's the 1-year graph to put that in context. We're right in the middle of the meaty part of the range here for the relativistic electrons. Nothing to write home about there. That's very unremarkable in that it's right in the median area. And there is the forecast model from NOAA. We didn't get quite as low as I expected. And the next one might be a little bit lower than NOAA's forecast as well. It all depends on the magnetic field strength of the incoming plasma. Also the magnetic field orientation, the BTBZ, which is the top line of your solar wind data. So let's take a look at the layer of the atmosphere where that is measured. The F layer of the ionosphere, again, it's at about 300 kilometers of altitude, right about there. Feel free to pause the video on this frame if you're not familiar with distances and chemical concentrations and electromagnetic radiation penetration and so forth. There is the F layer, courtesy of Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology. We hope they're doing a better job than the Australian Government Bureau of Virology. So there's your previous day in megahertz, the raw vibrational frequency of the bridge between Earth and space, known as the F layer of the ionosphere. Don't be effed. Know what's going on in the F layer. Here's the anomalygram of that same portion. This depicts anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. I feel like I've said that before at some point. And we didn't get nearly as much geomagnetic activity as we thought was possible, so pretty calm conditions there. No major anomalies showing up in the ionosphere. Here's the latest image. That's 1215 universal time ionogram and 1215 universal time anomalygram. Next, we'll show the total electron content forecast. Feel free to pause the video on this frame if you're not familiar with those distances. It's showing like distances to the outer Van Allen belt, the inner Van Allen belt, the SDO, Van Allen probes, the International Space Station. It orbits at about 230 miles of altitude. And here is the total electron content depicting free electrons to about 12,500 miles of altitude. And we're having major anomalies continuing here in the area around Western Australia, the Southern Indian Ocean, the Southern Ocean, Antarctica, the Southern Atlantic Ocean. Basically from south of Australia to south of Africa. Huge electron content anomalies there. Huge GPS errors likely in those regions. It's the coupled thermosphere, ionosphere, plasmasphere electrodynamics model. And if you want to read more about that, read the tabs down at the bottom of the page there on the Space Weather Prediction Center. History, data, details, impacts, etc. We also like to show the anomaly from the 10-day average for North America. So there is that. We are seeing some significant signals here over Guatemala, southern Mexico, etc. So right in here, significant signal there around southern Mexico. So we'll let that play through one more time. That's your total electron content anomaly from the 10-day average over North America, and we'll close out the space weather section of the video with the latest intensitygram and latest SDO magnetogram. So first we'll take a look at these new sunspots. See if we can get both of these new ones on. There we go, that's pretty good. So this new one, so far it's only alpha class, but there may be some other trailing North Pole umbrae behind it. This one up here is beta gamma class at least, maybe even beta gamma delta class. Maybe a little too early to actually tell on that. It does appear to be beta gamma. It is definitely beta gamma class. Whether it has deltas or not, I'm just going to say it's too early for me to tell. We'll get a better view of that throughout the day today. As far as this group down here, that does indeed have some deltas. They are pretty small though, although those main umbrae there are quite huge. So some little deltas down here. overall a very high likelihood of large solar flares. So don't be surprised to see an X-class flare or M-class flares in the coming days. We showed you the most likely locations for those. And let's move to our meteorology segment, because this is a value-added service. Since I discovered about 20 years ago that forecasting the weather is way too easy, all it requires, folks, is a basic understanding of atmospheric physics. It's not that complicated. So let's talk about that for a quick moment. This is relative humidity. So relative humidity is not humidity, because humidity is the amount of water in the air. All right? Relative humidity is dependent on pressure and temperature. And what we're talking about here is dew point. So if you look at a place that's really blue on this map, let's go to the Yucatan down here. So that is extremely high humidity. There you go. There's 100% humidity. And what that means is that water is unable to remain in vapor form. The water vapor condenses and forms droplets. That is known as precipitation. It's always the same. Snow, sleet, rain, fog. That's 100% relative humidity. So again, it is calculated based on the amount of moisture in the air, but the dew point is determined not just by humidity, but by temperature. In other words, at a given humidity, if you drop the temperature low enough, the water will come out of vapor form, turn into droplets, and you'll get sleet, snow, rain, or fog. Relative humidity 100%. Next time somebody says, it's really humid out, if it is raining, you can tell them that the relative humidity is 100%. If it's foggy, or if it's sleeting or snowing, relative humidity is 100%. Anyway, that's just a brief little thing about weather facts, and of course you can see some very dry regions of the planet. Relative humidity there in Saudi Arabia is only 6%. However, down here in this part of Africa, it's 98%. So relative humidity, it is referring to the point at which water vapor can no longer remain vapor and must condense, because the air becomes too cool to keep it in vaporous form. Anyway, let's move to our regularly scheduled wind maps. These are the surface winds of the eastern world. And if you're in the eastern world, share our videos. We have like no coverage any place besides the U.S. Here are the jet streams of the east. You can see the jet stream continues to blow backwards over the Indian Ocean there, the northern part. Here are the jet streams of the western world. Pretty coherent jet stream over the U.S., except Florida, where it's blowing backwards. And here is the surface wind scenario. So in Florida, you can expect to see weather patterns moving sort of the wrong direction. That is because of the jet stream influence. It usually moves weather systems west to east. So we've got a strong low in the Pacific and the Atlantic. Surface winds of the central world are looking like this. We'll tilt this down a little bit since there's nobody down there. And these are the jet streams. Best of luck to all of those poor saps in the Tour de France today, as their bikes are trying to split them in half. Taint first. Don't be split in half taint first by your bicycle, folks. More on that in a different video. Moving right along, again, dew point, folks. Dew point. If you want to read about dew point, there's a Wikipedia article about it. You can calculate the dew point if you feel like it. Again, it is dependent on not just temperature, but also vapor pressure, because these things are all dependent on each other. You can calculate the one when you don't have the other two, and so on. You know, it's physics, math. Anyway, here is the mean sea level pressure for our global map there. High pressure over Greenland at the moment. And a strong high pressure there over the northern Pacific. Powerful anticyclone, and you can see the clockwise rotation there. Clear skies over that part of the North Pacific are likely, and also some wind shear. Moving right along, here is the clouds and fog view. for the Americas. You see some low clouds moving south to north over Brazil. Shout out to Bruce the Batman, who can be quoted as saying, "I'm Batman." Here's our weather.gov map, and head to weather.gov if you've got weather alerts. A lot of heat advisories here. A lot of people will be blaming carbon dioxide and human emissions for all of that heat. I won't comment further, but if your location's lit, click your location at weather.gov. Weather.gov, here are some forecasts. That, my friends and foes and neutrals, is the temperature anomaly for the next 3 days based on the GFS model. The GFS 72-hour temperature anomaly forecast in degrees Celsius. So those whitish pink areas, those are going to be like 16 degrees Celsius above normal. Those purple areas will be like 12 degrees below normal temperature for this time of the year. Again, keep in mind it is degrees Celsius. GFS 72-hour forecast. Here's a GFS 72-hour pressure and precipitation forecast. And some severe weather here coming to eastern Kansas, southeastern Nebraska, and most of Missouri is going to get kaplastered, as some strong systems are expected to move toward the Gulf states quite soon, like tonight. So that's a GFS 72-hour pressure and precipitation forecast model. And here is your total accumulated precipitation forecast based on that same model in inches. Some areas there expecting 4 inches of rain, including Virginia Beach expecting some extreme rain. Shout out to Kyle. Next, your jet stream forecast. That is a GFS 72-hour 250 millibar wind forecast. And we will continue to have a somewhat coherent jet stream at least for the next about 3 days over the U.S. And the weirdest weather patterns can be expected in the southwestern portion, where the jet stream is not pushing systems from west to east. Moving right along, it's time to look at lightning, which does strike twice in the same place. For example, if there's a magnetite deposit, lightning will strike there repeatedly. Don't assume lightning is not going to strike the same place twice. If you see lightning strike a lamppost, don't go touch the lamppost. Lightning might be fixing to strike it again, and don't get struck by lightning. Most people who are struck by lightning do not survive. So that's where the lightning's been for the past about 10 hours. And here is the real-time lightning map. We show real-time lightning maps even though these videos were not streamed live. We like to show people where the teeth of the storms are. And there's what's going on at the moment. Quite a few active cells in the U.S. Mostly calm in Europe. It looks like a good day for racing in France. If you enjoy the content, please support the channel via a subscription to the Smash Team site. Yeah, smashomash.com/Smash Team. We created our own site because we needed more capabilities than Patreon, and now we have it. Shout out to Smash staff. Give her a raise by becoming a Gold or Silver Smash Team level member. These videos are brought to you in part by the Smash Team Gold and Silver level members, I should say. They're also brought to you at massive personal risk and expense by Smash staff and I, because keep in mind, folks, these videos are fast and good, but not cheap. Yeah, they're super expensive. And we would love to keep these videos coming to you. So get some cash coming to us. Give Smash staff a raise at smashomash.com/Smash Team. Our personal subscription services site. We're going to close out the video with U.S. Doppler radar, clouds and fog over the lower 48, and water vapor. There is the U.S. Doppler radar map showing all 50 states. Here is the lower 48. Memphis is in the crosshairs. although the strongest systems will be to its north and to its south. Here is the clouds and fog view, 3.9 micrometer infrared radiation. There is water vapor. And once again, we've got a blocking feature here. So we've got these two areas of drier, more massive air. That is a high pressure system. That is a high pressure system, relatively speaking. There is a low pressure system as convective forces take over there. Rapid precipitation there happening in Arkansas as we create the video. And there is a little bit of an influence of colder, more massive air coming in here from the north, thanks to you Canadians. Anyway, here's a recap to close out this video. That is U.S. Doppler radar depicting vertical motion in the air column from ground-based Doppler systems. Here is space-based satellite systems depicting infrared radiation at 3.9 micrometers. It shows clouds and fog even when it's dark. And here is the water vapor map. It shows all of the water vapor. And you can rest assured that most of Arkansas is currently at 100% relative humidity, a.k.a. the dew point. Anyway, thanks for tuning in to the Smash News Network, Least Busted Name in News. With all of this spooky, crazy stuff going on in space, I'm spooked. So I'm headed back to the bunker. Bombs away, and while I'm gone, may that solar wind be at your back. Whoa!